I had been working for 3 months at that Antarctic base, whose name cannot be mentioned, fulfilling monotonous shifts of control and maintenance. The absolute silence of the polar night blended with the electric hum of the machines, and boredom pushed me to wander down corridors where I had never been. A door without a sign caught my attention. It wasn't marked, but the magnetic lock seemed to have failed. I pushed and went in. Inside there was a cold metallic room, dimly lit. Grey filing cabinets lined the walls, a table with sealed folders and classified papers. The air had that dry smell of dust and electricity. I picked up one of the documents, folded and yellowed, bearing a red stamp. Classified. Restricted access, maximum level. My hands trembled. The report was written like a scientific study, full of technical terminology, but what I was reading seemed torn from another reality. Secret report, excerpt from personal diary notes. This is what the document said. Subject: comparative study on the invisible dome projector and its internal luminous elements. Classification secret. Dissemination prohibited. Inside the invisible dome projector, the notion that the moon and the sun are located outside the human world collapses completely, giving way to a truth that is becoming more widely accepted. Both are located inside the dome, designed as internal elements that not only provide light and cycle, but also fulfill a symbolic biological and alchemical function. The moon and the sun are not celestial bodies orbiting in infinity as imposed, but artifacts or controlled projections that operate within the Great Vault, calibrated to influence matter and human emotions. The moon, conceived as silver, and the sun as gold, follow a pattern inherited from ancient alchemy, where each star was assigned a metal, a process, and a meaning. Silver was always associated with reflectiveness, with the nocturnal, with receptivity, and its natural reaction when in contact with air made it a symbol of transformation. Silver darkens, becomes covered with a patina, and this superficial oxidation was interpreted as the sign of a passage, of a transition, of a change. Thus, the moon inside the dome projects its cold light as if it were that living metal which, over time, changes in brightness and hue, generating in humans a cyclical reading of its transformation. The sun, by contrast, was conceived as gold, incorruptible and stable, a symbol of purity and the fire that transmutes. Within the dome, the sun would not be a distant star in combustion, but rather a transforming system, an optical and electromagnetic generator that converts energy into visible and thermal radiation, filtered into different frequencies to create sunrises, midday peaks, and sunsets. Like an electrical transformer that changes voltage, the sun of the dome changes spectra, intensities, and rhythms, regulating both biological life and the psychic states of populations. We can therefore say that the moon and the sun are not isolated entities, but coordinated devices that intertwine in an alchemical dialectic. The silvery one that reflects and regulates, the golden one that warms and purifies. The functioning of this pair is not merely symbolic. Modern science recognizes that light regulates circadian rhythms, and with them, fundamental hormones. The sun activates the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the brain and synchronizes the secretion of melatonin and cortisol, controlling cycles of sleep, alertness, and stress. The moon, although much fainter in the dome narrative, modulates these same systems through calibrated emissions. Here we speak of the concept of our moon, or hormone, in which cold light, projected in different phases, radicalizes hormonal secretion, either by suppressing melatonin during prolonged nights of full moon, or by indirectly influencing pulses of the human reproductive cycles, as suggested by certain traditions and parallels with other living beings whose reproduction does indeed respond to lunar cycles. The moon inside the dome functions as a nocturnal oscillator. It regulates, alters, modulates, and thus its effect is indirect but profound on human behavior, being intrinsically connected as well to pulses emitted from the ice walls or first dome, as noted in previous reports. The hormonal radicalization traditionally associated with full moon nights, with insomnia, irritability, or uncontrolled impulses, would not in this framework be a mere myth, but the result of a conscious manipulation of the lunar light source, designed to amplify or suppress key biological functions. At this point, it becomes clear that both sun and moon are control artifacts, cogs in the luminous theater that sustains the projection of realities under the invisible dome, which, together with the artificial ice walls that conceal the emission and transmission of certain frequencies, ultimately induce various alterations in the so-called mental noise. From the perspective of alchemy, the moon as silver is subject to the corrosion of the invisible, which translates in human experience into shifting emotional states and reflections of the psyche. The sun as gold is the agent that never degrades, the eternal heat that transforms everything it touches. Both metals, like both bodies inside the dome, maintain the necessary tension so that the cycle of life appears natural, although in reality it is a carefully designed spectacle. If silver blackens over time and gold remains bright, men too change with lunar cycles while remaining anchored to solar constancy. Here it should be added about the red sun that appears near the first dome. But that subject is more complex and will be analyzed in future reports. In this vision, the dome itself resembles the plasma membrane of a cell. In biology, each cell is bounded by a membrane that regulates the exchange of materials and maintains internal homeostasis. In the universe of dome worlds, each dome fulfills the same function. It separates, protects, filters, and decides what enters and what leaves through certain passages. The ice walls and the structures of separation are equivalent to the lipid layers of the membrane. They act as semi-permeable barriers that isolate an internal environment, but under control, allow the passage of signals and influences. In the cell, the membrane is not only a boundary, it is also an organ of communication, recognition, biochemical control. Similarly, in dome theory, the walls and projections serve to keep stable the imposed version of reality, while the custodians decide what information crosses those borders, or at least attempted by adding military bases around the Antarctic Circle and radar systems that generate earthquakes in the region. The cell membrane and the dome share the principle of active isolation. They are not mere walls, but intelligent filters that order and sustain internal life, reinforced by a strong transmission of noise, generating mental alteration. This analogy is powerful because it shows that what humans interpret as sky, ice walls, or projections is in reality a complex artificial system where we could take each dome as a cell, each sun as an energy transformer, and each moon as a reflective modulator. Just as cells cooperate in an organism, domes are articulated in a greater tissue, communicating through invisible signals. The moon and the sun, placed inside each dome, are the luminous organs that sustain the spiritual and physical metabolism of each world cell, with more suns and more moons in some cases for different organisms. I closed the document with a racing heart. The cold of the room was no longer that of the Antarctic ice, but of having read something I was never meant to know, and which now I might never be able to escape. I kept silent and left carefully, fully aware that this report did not officially exist, and that now I would never be able to forget it.